Super Bowl 58 review, 49ers and Chiefs. Doing this from a perspective of a 49ers fan. It was a difficult game. We'll get into that. But I have to start off with the Chiefs because they won. They deserved to win. They were the better team. They were the better prepared team, the better coach team. And ultimately, they executed their game plan, and the players got it done. Patrick Mahomes wasn't his greatest game, but he had great moments, and when he had to make a play, he did it. And that's one of the signs of a champion. And that's what the all-time greats do. When their team needs them to step up, they do whatever it takes. And with him, it was being creative, making the throws, the runs, especially late in the game, hurt the 49ers. We will talk about legacies. Final was 25-22. And again, I'm saying this from a 49er fan perspective. This was a brutal loss. And I know that other fan bases would say, well, we'd love to be in your position. You've had so much success. You won all those Super Bowls, which is true all the way. I won't argue that at all. But over these last 10 to 15 years, we'll say, the 49ers franchise has had more difficult losses than any other franchise in that time. It has been hard. Think about the 3 Harbaugh seasons in 11, 12, and 13. Coming up short, championship, Super Bowl championship. And now with Shanahan, 19 loss, up by 10 in the fourth quarter. Then the 21 championship game against the Rams, you're up 10 by 10 at the start of the fourth quarter. Then last year's championship game, Brock Purdy gets injured right at the beginning of the game, cannot come back in, and you never really got to see the game play out, and you end up losing that championship. And now to lose Super Bowl 58 when you dominated the first half and then it was forced into overtime. I consider it the worst loss in the 49ers history. Franchise history. The worst loss in franchise history. It hurts. Because of what's come before. Because you already lost to the Chiefs in what you thought was about the worst possible way you could lose. This was worse because it was a rematch. It was an overtime loss. Mahomes did not have his best game. And the 49ers defense actually played better than they did in Super Bowl 54, though, of course, you have to factor in the Chiefs had a better offense. I mean, Mahomes had more weapons. But when you're just looking at the fact they never really broke down until, you're talking about the very end of the game and overtime. And Mahomes and the Chiefs turned the ball over. Okay, there was the fumble by Pacheco. There was the interception thrown by Mahomes in the third quarter. So he had a bit of an off game. He was out of sorts. Your defense played better. And your quarterback was better in this Super Bowl. And the pressure was on you, and you should have been the one that was more desperate to win this one. So to review again, Mahomes was off. Purdy was far better than Garoppolo was in 54. And then your defense, from a performance standpoint, was better in 58 than 54. Let's get to the game summary here. So final 25-24 or 25-22 Chiefs in overtime defeat the 49ers in Super Bowl 58. Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers had the ball first, which they like to defer. And McCaffrey had the fumble. And that was costly because if 49ers on that first possession, that was as good as any possession they had in the game. Really was. They moved down the field well, and then ends up being a fumble. And there was no scoring in the first quarter at all. It was 0-0 in the first quarter, and one of the things you could tell right away was this was a physical game, and it was going to be a fight from the beginning. Both teams were playing physical. Both teams weren't giving up much. I mean, both teams had to earn what they gained on offense. The 49ers' first score was a field goal, and that's one of the stories of the game, was settling for field goals. So 3-0 49ers. And the 49ers go up 10-0 late in the second quarter. It was the Juwan Jennings touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey, which was a great call, and that was the most creative play from Kyle Shanahan. So it's 10-0, and I was just saying there, well, you've been up by 10 before. I'm not getting excited. And though I'm a 49ers fan, you can go back and listen to the recording, I picked the Chiefs to win. I said, better coach, better quarterback, better defense. You don't have to make it any more complex than that. And though I think the 49ers matched them, and at least in the first half had a better defense than the Chiefs still had the better head coach. And I think just coaching all around, and they had the better quarterback. The Chiefs did score right before half a field goal, 10-3. And you're thinking, wow, 3 points. The defense held the Chiefs to 3 points, and the 49ers left points out on the field. And the fact that it was only 10-3, it should have been 13-3 at the least, if not 17-3 at halftime. The 49ers get the interception on Mahomes in the third quarter, and they're in, if I'm not mistaken, they were in Chiefs territory with that interception. And they could not even get 3. That was awful. Just awful. It was painful because it was a continuation of the first half and all these points and opportunities on the field. And you know you need all the points you can get against Mahomes. I don't care if he has a weaker supporting cast. The Chiefs are going to stop. The Chiefs are going to start scoring eventually. And what was the play that changed the game? Well, let me back up for a moment. That both running backs had fumbles. McCaffrey had fumbles deep in their own territory around the red zone. McCaffrey and then Pacheco. But the play that changed the game was the fumble, if you can call it a fumble, but the punt that hit the 49ers player, and then McLeod tries to grab the ball instead of fall on it, was just terrible because the defense just held the Chiefs, and they were holding the Chiefs down and locked them up, limited them, had not given up a touchdown until this play, the first play after the muffed punt return, and the Chiefs finally get in the end zone with 2:28 left in the third quarter. They had not been in the end zone. So, end of the third quarter, I should back up a little bit. Sorry, just so frustrating. The 49ers were up 10-6, and Butker got the 57-yard field goal. Then you have the muffed fumble. The Chiefs recover, and then they score a touchdown. And I'm like, I can't get angry at the defense. That's not even on them. That was on special teams. Special teams left 8 points on, and they were responsible for 8 points. There was the missed extra point by Moody. That really wasn't the problem. But then this touchdown that the Chiefs got, their first touchdown, and which got them going. It was 10-6, and the fact that the 49ers couldn't come away with anything, they were shut out in the third quarter, hurt badly. The fourth quarter, Purdy connects with Juwan Jennings for a 10-yard touchdown pass, 16-13. But then at that point, you have the missed extra point. So it's not a 3-point game. It's instead of a 4-point game, it's a 3-point game. And then with 5:46 left in the third quarter, Butker makes a field goal, and it's 16-16. 49ers have a longer drive that results in a field goal, 153. Moody makes a 53-yarder. He had some good kicks. I mean, he made a 55-yarder. He made the 53-yarder. Not going to get on Moody in this one. He did his job. It was unfortunate that he missed the extra point, but that didn't end up, hurting them as much as I feel some people make it out to be. You could say, well, it was a 1-point difference. It felt the Chiefs had to go down and get a touchdown at the end of regulation. They could have. I mean, they were taking their time. They knew, Butker's just about automatic. I mean, he's the second best kicker in the game after Justin Tucker. So the 49ers do get the field goal, but it hurt because, at the end of the game, they were settling for field goals, and you just don't beat the Chiefs with field goals. We talked about it with Super Bowl 54. We talked about it again and again and again amongst ourselves. If you get the opportunity to face the Chiefs again, you cannot settle for field goals. You have to punch it in with touchdowns. And, when you look at a score like 25-22, you only had 2 offensive touchdowns, 2 total touchdowns. Everything else was field goals. But the Chiefs got the ball back with 1:53 left, and they had all the time in the world. They had some timeouts. I believe they had 2 timeouts, 1:53. And Mahomes does it, and you just realize, you're going to have to play for overtime. You just need to hold them, hopefully, and play for overtime. And the 49ers did hold them. Plus, they got the ball to open up overtime. A very long opening possession that resulted in a field goal. The 2 teams, they had the ball once in overtime. And the fact that the 49ers had to settle for a field goal in overtime, and knowing that Mahomes, it's not sudden death, knowing that Mahomes is going to get the ball back, the game was over at that point. They needed a miracle because the defense was exhausted. And you got Patrick Mahomes on the other side. He just led the team down before overtime for a field goal. So best case scenario is that you're perhaps playing for double overtime. And speaking of overtime, this was only the second overtime game in Super Bowl history. But you knew the game was lost there. I mean, when they were settling for field goals instead of scoring touchdowns, and in overtime, you couldn't get it in for a touchdown. You're only up by 3. And you're looking at knowing Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the field. And will your defense come up with a big stop in overtime? Very unlikely. So he leads him down the field. And he late in this game, he had some amazing runs. He had the fourth down run where he took it himself. He had another one he escaped right up the middle, which would remind all Eagles fans of what happened to them last season. Not as long, but it was, I mean, this was just a back-breaking game. This was a rip your heart out and stomp on it. We, as the 49ers fans, this was just, as I said, a crushing loss. To have Mahomes beat you like this again. Ultimately, it ended with that touchdown to Hardman, 3-yard pass, and that's that. Chiefs win 25-24, and I want to start off by giving the credit to the Chiefs, and they had their struggles on offense, but they never gave up. They never gave up. They never gave in. And the offense woke up, and Mahomes made the plays we absolutely had to. And the defense came up with a lot of stops. You look at the box score here. Just reviewing what happened. Compare the two quarterbacks. Purdy was 23 of 38 for 255 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Compared to Mahomes, who was 34 of 46, 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Both quarterbacks were good, not great. I mean, Purdy only threw one ball that I really consider interceptable that Ayuk broke up. Otherwise, he was good enough to win. I mean, one of the major stories was Christian McCaffrey, 22 carries. We were talking about 25 to 30 carries and touches. He ended up having 30 touches, 22 carries, 8 receptions. The Chiefs just, the longest play for him was 11-yard run on the ground. He had the 24-yard reception, which was great. But the Chiefs stopped McCaffrey, and he was the offensive player of the year. He was such a joy to watch throughout the whole season. He was the 49ers' best offensive weapon, one of the best in the game. And he was held to 3.6 yards a carry on the ground. The 49ers altogether ran for 110 yards. They were outrushed by the Chiefs. 49ers had 110 yards, 3.5 yards a carry. Chiefs had 134.3 yards. But who's the best runner? You would think about who's the best runner in this game. It was Patrick Mahomes. It was 9 carries, 66 yards, and he had the 22-yard run. Receivers for the 49ers. No one had a good game, particularly. Christian McCaffrey, he had 8 receptions for 80 yards. Yeah, good for a running back. But that didn't make up for the fact that just never got it going consistently on the ground. And at times I don't feel the 49ers stuck to the ground this game as much as they should have. But look at the rest of these receivers, actual receivers and times. Brandon Ayuk, 3 for 49. Juwan Jennings had 4 for 42. He had a good game. Deebo Samuel, 3 for 33. Juszczyk, 2 for 31. McLeod and Conley had some one catch each, but McLeod was 19 yards and Conley was 18, which was surprising. But this is the one circled. George Kittle, 2 receptions, 4 yards for George Kittle. 2 receptions, 4 yards. Well, you look at the other side. 49ers did good with Pacheco, too. He only averaged 3.3 yards a carry. But Travis Kelce continued his good play, especially in the second half. And it helped when Dre Greenlaw went out. There's no question about it. It certainly did. 9 receptions, 93 yards. Otherwise, not a lot. Hardman, 3 receptions, 57. He had the 52-yard reception. Rice only had 39 yards receiving. That's what's frustrating. I mean, Kelce made some big plays later in the game, but, considering it was overtime game, 9 for 93 is not bad. But the injuries, they hurt. I don't want to make an excuse for the 49ers, but the injuries hurt. And not having Greenlaw, especially in the second half of the game. I mean, he is... that's a first. You cannot remember this happening in a Super Bowl. Greenlaw tears his Achilles on the sideline. Deebo Samuel, he strained his hamstring. They were limited in what they could do with him. George Kittle ended up, I believe it was a shoulder he left. He had to leave at halftime, he had to leave for a part of overtime. And Feliciano, he got hurt. It was not their night. Because while it was afternoon, things were going well. But when it became evening, things went down. Play calling. I want to see the 49ers stick to the run more and get a little more creative with getting the ball Christian McCaffrey. And I thought they abandoned the run to the left side. It's like, make the Chiefs stop it. And they really didn't make the Chiefs stop them running to the left side. The fact that they didn't get any earlier in the game before Deebo was hurt with the hamstring. I mean, what happened to the wide receiver screens with him? I mean, I was expecting to see the play they used against the Eagles. Didn't do it. And then how about a tight end screen for Kittle? How about making a concerted effort to get George Kittle the ball? They didn't. And I know he has multiple responsibilities with blocking. Steve Wilks on their side was fantastic. This was his best game as the 49ers defensive coordinator. He stepped it up. And tip your cap to the defensive line for the 49ers. All 4 guys played well. I mean, Bosa didn't register any sacks, but he was pressuring Mahomes all game long. Bosa had 2 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. He was all over the place. Chase Young, he had a very nice second half, and he consistently put pressure on Mahomes as well. And then Armstead made some big plays. I mean, he looked healthier. The 2 weeks did him good. And then even Hargrave made a play or 2 even in the run. Yet it was not good enough. I thought the secondary was fine. Linebackers, they did their best once Greenlaw went out. But, the defensive line for the 49ers was under so much heat, and they stepped it up and responded well. And they're certainly not to blame. I am not pointing the finger at the defense at all in this one. It's the offense. It is the offense of the 49ers. Both defenses were fantastic. I mean, Nick Bolton, 13 tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits. Chris Jones, once again, was a problem. Karlaftis, half a sack, 3 quarterback hits. He was very good. I mean, they were good on all 3 levels. You look at the Chiefs, they were better on all 3 levels of defense than the 49ers, though the 49ers were very good. And you look at the skill positions and players on all three levels, you say, defensive line, Chris Jones and Karlaftis. Linebackers, they have Bolton and Gay. And then the secondary, they have Sneed and they have McDuffie. They built themselves a very good defense. And yeah, they were playing very tight coverage, very physical. And you have to applaud Steve Spagnuolo. Another incredible performance in the Super Bowl for Steve Spagnuolo. If you're, and I'm not going to go into a huge amount of review here. We'll get back to this game again another time. But legacies. Let's just get into the legacies quick. The Chiefs are a dynasty now. And that's what it means for the franchise. And they have their place in history. That's 3 in 5 years, and they went back to back. Andy Reid, he's one of the top 5 coaches of all time now. You have to say that. You think of Belichick and Lombardi, Shula, Walsh, Chuck Noll, and Andy Reid. I mean, top 5, top 6. I mean, he may be top 3. I know people would laugh at that and say you're crazy. It's not crazy. This is his 3rd Super Bowl victory now. He's been to 5 total as a head coach. And then Mahomes, 2 MVPs in the regular season, 3 Super Bowl MVPs. It's 3 out of 4 for him. 3 Super Bowl championships, and then 4 appearances total. If you want to say he's a top 10 quarterback of all time, even a top 5 quarterback of all time, I'm not going to push back on that. What a start to his career. And, Travis Kelce stepped it up. And the defense of the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, what a great combination you have between Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. With the 49ers, wow. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, I just can't remember there being more pressure on a coach, and this one's going to hurt him. I mean, what can you say? As an offensive coordinator, the 28-3 to the Falcons, the overtime loss to Tom Brady, and then the Super Bowl 54 loss, being up by 10, and now this one losing in overtime to the Chiefs. As it's going to continue to be said about him that he's a choker, which I don't think is fair, but that's what everyone says, and he can't win the big one. Well, it's true. I'm not going to say he's a choker, but it's true he can't win the big one. And I liked at times he was more aggressive than I thought he would be. But he needed to be more aggressive in overtime because you were not going to win with a field goal. I'll tell you that. That was not going to be good enough. It wasn't good enough. And he returns back to the Bay Area without a Lombardi. The 49ers, who were the first to win 5, have now lost 3 in a row. And I can't think of a worse streak in NFL history for losing big games outside of the 90s Bills than these 49ers in the last 5 years, with just 4 devastating losses. That's exactly what they are. Devastating losses, as they have not been able to get it done. this is a hard one, and it's not worse for anyone. It's not more difficult for anyone more than Kyle Shanahan because of all the pressure, and he knows what everyone says. He wasn't able to get it done, and it was Patrick Mahomes on their side of the field, but this is the 49ers. No excuses. You were the first to win 5, and you lost the last 3. And he's going to have to wear this all off season. And the 49ers season does not begin until the conference championship game. Brock Purdy, he's not a game manager. If you want to say anything about him, for him, going forward, you can't call him a game manager. He proved that in the Super Bowl. The 49ers have a lot of heart. They don't give up. They fight. They're a tough team. And sad for them that they've run into Patrick Mahomes both times in the Super Bowl. And with them, they don't sweat over a deficit. It's almost like, well, when the Chiefs are behind in the Super Bowl by 10, they have you right where they want you. And if you make the little mistakes, they will make you pay. And they did make the 49ers pay. So Super Bowl 58 goes to the Chiefs.